Welcome back to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Steve Mantis, and our guests today are from Poverty-Free Thunder Bay, Virginia Necan, and Terri Lynn Carter. So Terri, tell me a little bit about why you got involved with Poverty-Free Thunder Bay.
I was going to say, I got really sick when I was going to school. I was going to university, and I became very ill. And so it was sort of a snowball effect, right? I couldn't finish the career path I wanted to go on because it was too stressful. It was bioinformatics. It was computers and biology and
oh my gosh, it's way over my head. Oh, whoa.
Yeah, and I realized I struggled with it for a few years with my illness, and I realized that was not, it wasn't going to work out. It was too much, too intense. So then I ended up back home here in Thunder Bay. And I'm like, well, I have to do something. I'm not the type to just sit around and do nothing. But I was not well, right? So I'm struggling with my health and trying to figure out what else I could do with my life. And I just started volunteering, and I went to the Art Eggleton thing where I met Aaron. And I thought, no, this is good. I need something positive to focus on, something I can make a difference. And just the struggles we have when we're ill, like, you know, navigating through the healthcare system, navigating through support systems, you know, when you sign up for the Ontario Disability Support Program, you're given a drug card, and you said, oh, this will cover all your medication. Well, that's not true. You know?
It's not?
So, no, it's not true at all. So it's just these things, right, that you're like, wow, and you're just uncovering one layer after another that, you know, like these things that you thought, oh, these supports are here, they're going to help, and then you're like, no, wait a minute, it's only half the story. So I really got involved because I thought this is something I can help give a voice to. I've educated, so I can really help push advocacy piece, and so I just went from there.
Well, I'm really glad that both of you got involved. It's so familiar to me because I had a similar path. You know, it was 30-something years ago when we had someone come in from out of town to give us a presentation, and we started our injured workers group back in 1984, kind of the same kind of set of events there. Yeah, that's great. So what are some of the things that Poverty Free is focusing on in, you know, at the present and in the, you know, recent past?
One of the latest things we did was affordable housing. We've been doing affordable housing for a while now because there's just such a lack of affordable housing in our community. We wanted to push for a national housing strategy when that bill it was a couple of years ago. It was in the federal government, and they voted no and killed it right there, so it has to be reintroduced. But the governments have stopped putting money into building infrastructure, and next year, because next year the mortgages on the co-ops are going to start coming up for renewal, and they're not going to be renewed. So just in November, Virginia will tell you about our day of action that we had in November.
Virginia,
oh yeah.
What happened back in November?
We had a rally outside the city hall, and had guest speakers, rally protests, guest speakers, and people came and shared their stories of their struggles and how they try to find housing or their living conditions, and yeah.
So is it just affecting, I mean, I know the rents and the property values have gone, you know, through the roof here in Thunder Bay. I can't believe how expensive things have gotten. So is this just for people that are receiving social assistance, Ontario Disability Support Program, or are other people affected by this as well?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of people. I have several friends who have good jobs that can't find housing within the price range, you know, and because rents have gone up so much. So it affects a wide range of people. But we're most concerned about the lower wage people because people on Ontario Works don't even get enough money to pay for rent. Their whole check is $656, which if rent starts at $700, like they're not even getting enough to pay rent.
No, wait, just take me back here 2 steps. So these are people getting $600 a month for rent. And what program is that?
This Ontario Works.
That's Ontario Works.
So a single person would get $656, so that's their rent and food.
That's everything.
That's their entire budget.
$650 if you're on Ontario Works, which is, I guess, social assistance.
Yeah.
And you've got to both rent an apartment and feed yourself?
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's a real problem, eh? So what do people do in a situation like that where you can't actually afford to actually rent your apartment and then eat?
Yeah.
How do people deal with that?
We have huge waiting lists for social housing.
So there is a
people are-
program now of social housing. So if you qualify, the rent goes down. How does that work?
So through the Thunder Bay District Social Service Administration Board, they would, it might be through Thunder Bay Housing actually, they're tied in together. They would apply for rent supplements. So they would get into an approved apartment, and then the rent program boosts up the difference that they can't pay. But it's hard to get into those programs, right? That's why the wait lists are just so long.
So how long would it take for a person to be able to qualify for that subsidized housing?
It could take a few years.
A few years?
Yeah, unless you're in an emergency, and even then I've heard people waiting quite a long time, even in an emergency situation.
So what do people do in the meantime?
Couch surf, shelter house, Salvation Army, like, yeah.
And so you mentioned before that the federal government was looking at putting dollars into creating more affordable housing, but decided not to.
Yeah, no, they cut the program, I think, I'm going to say 20 years ago.
Okay, so
So
this
there
is
has
something
been
that...
no funding, very few funding for actual units. They're moving more towards the rent subs, but if there's no apartments to be rented, then there's no apartments to be rented, right? So there's a big problem.
And so why did the federal government cut back on the housing piece? What's going on there?
They thought the private sector would run in there and build all these apartment buildings.
But
and it
didn't
never happened, so yeah.
What other challenges do people face in terms of getting apartments? Say they're making a bit more money. What are people's experiences there? Virginia, what do you know about that?
What I've seen is people aren't getting rented too because of their nationality, and yeah, that's basically it.
So, you mean if you're not kind of mainstream, if you're coming from a northern community, people are reluctant to actually rent you an apartment?
Yeah.
And so you've seen that in your own experience.
Yeah, I've seen that over and over, and I've even experienced that over and over. But yeah, because many people are crowded in one place, or they're looking for a place, or they're just getting the rundown places, and they're getting accused of wrecking that place that was already wrecked to begin with. And yeah, it's just, you're lucky if you find the place, and that's it.
We need to take a short break. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.